Alright guys, I've had a lot of people asking me for videos on the Ailunce HD2, so today we're going to start getting into that. First off, if you're seeing this video on Instagram, you're only going to be seeing the first 90 seconds of it, since Instagram is limiting Reels now to 90 seconds long. So the full version of this video is going to be over on YouTube. If you want to see the full version, head over there. If you're just going to keep watching this on Instagram, you're just going to see the video cut off at 90 seconds. So, now, getting into the HD2. If you've been around my channel for a while, you've probably heard me talk before about how I believed if we could get a dual band digital radio with AES 256 encryption that is IP67 rated and has a multi-pin connector, that would likely be an ideal radio for preparedness. So, my thoughts on dual band have actually changed a little bit, but that's a conversation for a different time. So, needless to say, when I found out the HD2 was coming out and it had AES 256 encryption, I was actually getting pretty excited about it. So, let's just take a look at it real quick. Going over the good things first. Like I said, this radio is IP67 rated, so it is completely waterproof. It has the multi-pin connector. It's a dual band radio. It's VHF, UHF. It also has an FM broadcast receiver in it, which nice to have, not necessarily a need to have in my opinion, but your mileage may vary. Where was I? Oh, charging. USB-C charging needs to be something that's a lot more widespread, and Ailunce is apparently listening. There is USB-C charging built into the battery, and that same USB-C charger that can plug into the battery here, it comes with that USB-C charging cable that also plugs into the charging cradle for the radio. So, kind of dual purpose there. So, overall, it sounds like it's going to be a very exciting radio. Now, in actuality, I was a little, let's say, underwhelmed by the radio. Let's kind of get into that a little bit. Before I turn it on, we'll point out the first thing. If we take a look underneath the battery, something I was less than impressed about, we have our battery contacts here underneath on the back side of the radio. Those are just held on by screws. That's not something that's entirely... I haven't seen this on any other radio. And especially like on my Hytera HP782, we'll just take a look at that real quick. There's the battery contacts on that radio. That is what we're typically used to seeing on pretty much any radio. I'm seeing them like that, not with the screws. So, a little less than impressed about that. Let's, sorry, I'm trying to get the battery back into the Hytera, because we're going to need that in a minute. I'm trying to do this one-handed. I don't normally do the batteries one-handed. Alright, I'm going to set the phone down for a second. Okay, so Hytera is turning back on. Another thing I'll point out, I know a lot of people watching this video probably are not going to care about the FCC regulations or FCC IDs too much, but something I have heard pointed out, the FCC ID that's listed on the label here on the HD2, that's not a real ID. And that's not a real FCC ID from what I've seen. So take that for what it's worth. On that topic, since we're already kind of talking about that, you will see probably a lot of videos or a lot of comments about the HD2. Okay, so this battery was actually pretty easy to put in one-handed. If that's going to be important to you, maybe you'll like that. There has been a lot of talk about these radios having some really horrible harmonic issues when you're transmitting. So essentially what that means, now you can find these videos on YouTube, and they're actually demonstrating this with really nice quality test equipment. But let's say you're pressing the PTT and you're transmitting on VHF. Well, testing the radio, it's showing it's not actually just transmitting on VHF, but you're getting a transmission on UHF in the 400 range. You're getting some, I think there's like a harmonic in the 300 range. There was one in like the 600 range. And then there was one in like the 700-800 range. So, for one, that means you're not getting all of your transmit power going out on the frequency that you're trying to transmit on. So you're not actually getting the full power that you think you're supposed to be getting. But it's also causing interference in those other bands. Now, again, I know a lot of people aren't going to be too concerned about that, but it's something to keep in mind if you do want to go the route of getting one of these radios. You should know that it's doing that, because especially if you have, like, let's say you have law enforcement or public safety systems in your areas that are on the 700-800 megahertz in that band, this could potentially be causing interference issues on those, and that is really not something you want to be doing. So, that aside, let's start taking a look at the Ailunce. One thing I will give it is the boot time on the Ailunce is actually much quicker than I think any of my Hyteras. It's actually surprisingly quick. I'm a little underwhelmed by the user interface on this radio. It's very clunky. I've likened the user interface on Hyteras to like older cell phones as well. This is taking that a step further, and it's going back. I mean, this feels like a user interface you'd see on a cell phone back in like the, I don't know, late 90s. I don't know. I wasn't old enough to have a cell phone back then, so I can't really say for sure. Kind of gives you an idea of how old I actually am. One of the things that I've had an issue with this radio is I have actually noticed a delay in receiving transmissions that are coming from close by the radio, and I can kind of demonstrate that with the Hytera here in a second. So the Ailunce HD1s, they were known to have issues with their receivers. Now, I don't know, I know this was an issue with them when I originally started looking at the HD1 back when it initially came out. They were using what's called a direct conversion receiver. It's a much less expensive receiver type, and as we've said before, you get what you pay for when you're working with electronics. So that direct conversion receiver, it was known to be completely desensitized by a transmission coming from another radio nearby. So if you have the Ailunce and another radio on the same channel, that other radio keys up, the receiver is not going to pick that up at all. So they do seem to have improved that on the HD2. And like I was saying, I don't know if they fixed that issue on later releases of the HD1, something you might have gotten in the last year or two. But, and that delay that I'm seeing now it's not consistent. It happens intermittently. And I'm going to see if I can get it on camera here for you guys. But it's enough of a delay to where if you're exchanging call signs back and forth, you're probably going to miss that first call sign. And depending on what you're using the radio for, if it's just for ham radio, probably not a big issue. If you're using it to try to listen to local public safety, or if you're using call signs within your group and you lose that first bit of the transmission that includes that call sign, you're going to be losing a lot of context for what's going on. But enough of my rambling there. Let's see if I can get it to, see if I can recreate that issue. Testing. All right, so that's the exact issue that I was seeing. So you notice there, you heard me talking over the Hytera before it started popping up on the Ailunce, and you might think that it's that I was just not on the same channel. I was. You saw it pop up here. So whatever the reason for that delay is, I'm significantly unimpressed by that. That's a big issue. It's, I don't really know what would be causing that delay. I don't have any kind of test equipment to try and figure that out for myself, or honestly the time to try and dig into that. that would be something I would have to talk to some other people about and see if they were able to test it. What is going on with the date and time there? I have it set through the CPS to pull the date and time from my computer into the radio, and obviously it is not 1970. That doesn't need any more explanation. Some other things I've noticed with the radio: the CPS is very unrefined. I have a couple issues in there. I can kind of go into those later in detail. It wasn't well designed. You can't get to the bottom of a lot of the settings pages, so there's actually some settings you're not able to change in the CPS, even though you can see the headers for them there. You can't actually get to them. And then going through the CPS, changing the settings, trying to see what all you're really able to set up in the radio or do in the radio, it's actually very limited compared to what you'll see in a typical like LMR radio CPS, if it's anything for like Hyteras, EF Johnsons, Motorola's. It's easy to tell that the Ailunce was primarily designed around ham radio. It was not designed for the LMR market. That being said, there's a benefit to having less options in the CPS. It actually makes it a little bit easier to get through. So if this is going to be a first radio, or maybe this is going to be your upgrade from a Baofeng, you'll probably have a little bit of an easier time getting through the CPS on this than you would on Hytera, Motorola, EF Johnson, any other brand there. You might have an easier time programming this one. You also don't have to... The CPS doesn't require you to program your channels into a zone in order for it to be written to the radio. You can actually have just all of your channels in essentially one list that you can scroll through the entirety of your channels. Me personally, I'm not a fan of that. I end up with... I really heavily utilize the zones to break out different groups of channels to make stuff easier to find. I don't want to have to scroll through an entire list to find everything. So, like I said, I'm a little bit underwhelmed by the Ailunce. Honestly, I was hoping for some better performance. I would like to see some of the less expensive radios on the market be able to perform a little bit better. I haven't had a chance to test out the AES-256 encryption on here. I know a lot of other people have. I've heard that the AES-256 encryption specifically is compatible between this and the Anytone 878. And I know from other research and talking with other people that the 878 is compatible with Hyteras and Motorola's and other radios that are using the Motorola standard DMRA AES-256 implementation of that encryption algorithm. It does have ARC4 encryption as well, and I have not been able to get ARC4 encryption on the Ailunce working with my Hyteras. So a little bit disappointed about that, primarily because I'm still not running AES-256 on my Hyteras because of the cost of that feature control license for it. I don't have $200 per radio extra to throw at the Hyteras right now, and kind of debating if and how I will go about that in the future. More than likely, that's just an if. Anyways, so all that aside, the Ailunce HD2, for the money, is not going to be a bad option. From what I was seeing, I think I was poking around Redivis's website yesterday. The radio is available now. I think it's on sale for $170. So that's actually going to be... I think this is going to be the cheapest radio on the market right now that is dual band DMR with a standard AES-256 encryption that is IP67 rated and has a multi-pin connector. I think it's the only I think it's the only one with a multi-pin connector that's IP67 and dual band and has AES 256 and all that, but also it's the cheapest. I believe there was a TYT radio that came out a year or so ago that was dual band and DMR and AES 256 and IP67, but that one still used the 2-pin Kenwood Baofeng style connector, and that radio was only rated for IP67 if the connector cover was in place. So for me, that kind of ruins that whole thing. So if you've determined that this is what you need, that this radio suits your needs for the price, I think you're going to be hard pressed to find a better option. Personally, this is not the radio for me. I've had a hard time putting aside I've gotten very used to the higher end LMR radios just since I've been messing around with the Hyteras and starting to poke around with the EF Johnsons. I've gotten very used to the quality that those radios bring to the table, and the Ailunce just doesn't quite stack up to those, which, to be entirely fair, it's not designed to be a replacement for LMR radios. This is a ham radio designed for the ham market. It comes locked to ham frequencies when you get it. Like most other ham radios, you'll have to unlock it when you get it, which I have a video here on Instagram of how to unlock that. You can scroll back a little ways and find it. It's easy to do. It's just a button combination from the keypad. You don't even need a computer to do it. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with the Ailunce HD2 right now. I'm going to keep messing around with it a little bit, see if there's really any more information I can get on this radio, anything that I can find to make it work better, and whatever else I find that's worthy of another video, I'll come back and reshoot it. I've got really mixed feelings about this radio. I was really hoping for more, given the price, given the market. It's doing okay for the price, but going back to that delay in receiving that transmission nearby, I've got an issue with that. That needs some more testing, some more evaluation, try and figure out exactly what's going on there. Like I said, it doesn't happen all the time, but happening at all for me is an issue. So I feel like I'm kind of starting to ramble on now. I'll try and cut this video short. Something else I wanted to mention, some of you may remember back in the end of May or beginning of June, I was talking about actually raffling off this radio in support of a charity. The reason I still have the radio is no one actually bought a ticket for that raffle. Just in case anyone was wondering, I may still try to do something else with this radio later, we'll just kind of see what's going on. It's been a busy summer. I know a lot of you have been waiting around a while for this video, so I hope this was able to answer some of your questions. If you've got any other questions, if you think there was anything I missed, you can always send me a DM on Instagram. I'm happy to get back to you guys. I really enjoy being able to help out anyone who's trying to get into the subject of comms for preparedness. I know it's not an easy topic. This is something that I've been exploring myself for over 10 years now. It was 10 years ago when I originally got my first radio, because I was trying to find some way that I would be able to have some form of emergency communications when I'm out with my family, and yeah, that was 10 years ago, and here we are today. Anyways, I really enjoy being able to help you guys out. If you have any other questions, always feel free to reach out to me. I try not to leave any message unanswered. I have been having some issues with messages on Instagram. They sometimes I don't get a notification about the message for a couple of days. If you're trying to message me on there and I'm not getting back to you, you can also email me, resilientcivilian@gmail.com, and I'm happy to get back to you there. All right, guys. Thanks for your time. Got any questions, comments, concerns? DM me, leave them in the comments, and we'll get back to you. Until next time.